Hello and welcome to the show. This is Everything Under the Sun. My name's Ty. Hope all of you are doing well. I had to stop myself from laughing before I started recording this. I just a lot of funny things happened before I hit the record button, so I just need to keep myself calm in some ways. But anyway, hope all of you are doing well. Hope you had a great week. I'm very hopeful today, obviously, from what I'm saying right now. It's been a great weekend for me, a great past few days, I guess. It's been a lot of adventures, going out, enjoying beautiful weather. I don't know, it's been really, really nice here. I'm going to try to slow down what I'm saying because I'm talking really fast. It's been really nice here. A lot of hikes. Got to meet a good friend of one of my best friends, and, it's always great to meet people. And, it's just great to kind of get out and do things and be active in so many ways, especially when you get to enjoy such a beautiful area like I live in. I feel like that's kind of bragging, but I keep bragging about this area I live in. Come up to Humboldt. It's beautiful. You get to see some beautiful things. It's kind of out of a postcard. It seems really just amazing. So speaking of that, I went on this hike this past weekend with a buddy of mine and another friend's dog. It was like we were just this oddball crew, but we went on this hike to this. It was on this beach called Private Beach, but the hike was to this spot where my buddy was like, it's a good fishing spot. I don't go fishing anymore, but I used to go fishing a long time ago. He still goes fishing, but he was like, yeah, it's a really cool spot. Like not many people know about it. So we start hike along this beach, okay, and the dog doesn't have a leash on. Okay, so this is just a little backstory. The dog doesn't have a leash on, and I didn't know this dog was afraid of water. So that's gonna come in. That's gonna come in handy a little bit later on down the line. So we're walking along this beach, really cool beach. Took a lot of pictures, and about 15 minutes later, we start getting to this area where we have to start scaling the side of this rock in order to get to that fishing spot. So I mean, it's like a 15-minute walk in order to get to this area in general. And the last part of that walk is to kind of go down this sand dune and then walk alongside the beach, and it's just rocks, and the waves are coming in. You don't get wet, but the waves are pretty close. And this is the part where I didn't know the dog was afraid of water, but this dog was deathly afraid of water. And the last part was, okay, going along this beach, and the waves were, I guess, a little too close for comfort for this dog, and he just started hauling ass back up the sand dune, and every time we started calling him, he just would look back and run a little bit further. And then once he basically got out of eyesight, my buddy was like, okay, I'm going to go find him. But basically this is how you get to, that spot. You just have to go up this rock and climb inside and, go towards the beach. So I'm looking at where the water is. I'm looking at where the rocks are. And I'm like, I'm going to have to climb through these rock formations for a little bit before I get to, the outlook. And I mean, these rocks are huge. They're these huge boulders that look like they've been there for centuries, just collapsed off the side of a mountain. So I'm not really sure how sturdy these things are. I mean, again, they look like they've been there for a while, but I'm just kind of sketched out. I haven't been there before, and now my buddy's running towards the opposite direction to find this dog that, again, is just deathly afraid of water, and probably running back to the car, which exactly what the dog did. So I go inside this cave by myself. There's this narrow little cliffside that maybe has, I don't even know, 4 or 5 inches of footing, and then there's just rocks on both sides. So you basically have to just hold on to the rock and then scale the side of this little cliffside. And if you fall, you're falling about 9-10 feet, and you're probably going to hit rocks on your way down, so you're going to die. And well, at least this is what I'm thinking as I'm scaling the side of this, and I'm like, I should just turn around. But I hear the ocean on the other side, and I'm like, it's probably actually really beautiful to see what's on the other side of this. So I take that motivation and I keep going. And then I get to this other part where I can go left or I can go right. And left looks like I have to squeeze in between 2 rocks. And if I fall between that crevice, then that's a 12-foot drop. And then I die. Or I can go to the right, and it's just a little narrow strip where I have to jump across this kind of gap. And in between the gap is about an 11-foot drop. And on the other side, it's relatively flat. There's just a big boulder rock, and I can kind of see the opening. So I decided to do the little jump. I mean, it wasn't that big. It was maybe a foot. I could actually step over it. I think that's what I did. And I just sat there because I was like, is this the view that that he was talking about? And I didn't want to go the other way because the other way was certain death, as far as I understood. And I was like, this looks like death. I'm not going to even try to attempt to climb down that. And so I just sit there, and I'm sitting there for a few minutes, take a few pictures, and then I leave. And as I'm getting out, I see my friend, with the dog as I'm like going up the sand dune, and he's like, "Did you go the other side?" I'm like, "No, like I don't know what the other side is. You kind of just pointed in the direction towards the rock." And I went the safest route. And he was like, "No, you're supposed to climb down and go to the other side." So I was like, "I don't know how you do that." So we ended up going back over there. He has his dog's leash now, so the dog isn't running away. So we get to the rock formation, and I don't know how he does this, but scaling the side of that rock and then climbing down, which was the part that like I didn't want to go down because I thought that that was going to be just the sketchiest way down. But he somehow did this because he held the dog. He was holding the dog in one hand. This is a 25, 30-pound dog. It's not very heavy, but you have to actually hold a dog. Like, they squirm and they move and stuff like that. So he's holding this dog, scaling the side of this rock. And I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" So I ended up like following him, just like following which rocks he went down. And then we have to climb back up some more rocks to get to this other platform. And he also does this holding the dog. It's crazy. And we get to this other side, and it's crazy beautiful. I mean, it's really amazing. And on both sides, like there's no way to actually get down, because if you do fall down, you fall towards rocks, and it's not very pleasant. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's death. It's beautiful death. But on the other side, it looks like you can see like just waves crashing along this like kind of beach area where there's no access to. Like, you'll never see people standing over there. And it was just kind of like this just really amazing spot. And it's a place that I've never been to. Now, I've been in this area for over 5 years now, and this is a place I've never been to. So it was just kind of crazy. And that's why I love going on hikes, because you always find something new, or at least there's the opportunity to find something new. And I don't know, that was a good highlight of my weekend, as far as just seeing that and being able to see that. And I took a bunch of pictures, so maybe I'll post that on the social media pages. But anyway, from that story, it was a long, eventful weekend. Good stuff happened. I'm really happy for it. But I'm gonna get going with this podcast because you didn't come here to listen to my weekend stories. So I got this box here, shaking it up some and figuring out what the topic for next week is. And yeah, hopefully it's something good. What we got? Judgment. Judgment? Was there an episode on Judgment already? Probably not. But Judgment. Maybe I just spoke about judgment. Judgment is a big thing. I mean, there's judgment happening all the time, like whether it's judgment from you, judgment from other people, judgment that we feel within ourselves, or it's just always something that's so pervasive in our life. So I think that'll be a good topic. It's very vague. I guess there's so much judgment, but I think today's topic was pretty vague, and just like the sense of how dynamic and vast it can be. So, but I think that like that also opens up a lot of room for conversation, and a lot of room for just speaking about the topic in various ways. It's not something that's structured in a way that you have to speak about a certain way, or have to speak about the topic in a certain light. So, be as vague or vast as possible, and just have conversations off that. And I think that'll be a good conversation to have. Judgment. So that's going to be topic for next week. And the topic for this week, as many of you may know or may not know, I don't know, is influence. Well, you should know because you clicked on the episode and it was titled Influence. So today is going to be a conversation about influence, and I think this is something that is so important to understand, because we are constantly being influenced. Like, it's constantly happening in our lives. Like, no matter what, we are always being influenced, and it's coming from different places. It can come from your friends, your family, your parents, your social media. It can come from yourself. We can be influenced by ourselves. A book. It literally, so many things influence us, and so many of those things influence us without us even knowing it. And that's the thing that's like so important to understand about influence, is that everything that we like, everything that we dislike, everything that we know is due to influence. The language that we speak is because you were influenced to speak it in some kind of way because of your surroundings. Like, that is the definition of influence. Is to have your mind and your thoughts and your feelings being manipulated or influenced in some kind of way based on something else, based on some kind of action or activity or circumstance or information that's being divulged to you. We are constantly being influenced always, and it's something that's always going to be pervasive. But the thing is, like, there are these influences that are subversive, these things that influence us without us knowing, and not always in the best way. Because not all influences are bad. Like, there are good influences. There are things that influence us to move further, to progress ourselves, things that influence us to make radical changes. And those are good influences, but there are bad influences as well. In that same light, there are things that influence us to feel bad about ourselves, to look at other people or the world, look at a situation in such a negative light. There are influences that bring us down, that bring our energy down, and it's not something that's good for us. And 9 times out of 10, there is a lot of influence that is coming to us, especially now more than ever with social media. And I think during political season, I think that's just like something that brings up so much just turmoil in our country. And I'm not sure if this is the same for other countries. I mean, we have different types of political systems in different countries, so maybe there are other countries that deal with it in a less stressful way. But I know personally, from seeing it and from having conversations and seeing friendships dissolve in different situations and different magnitudes just surrounding politics. I mean, this is something that's so heated, and that's something that divides us in so many different ways. So we are influenced in radical ways, both internally and externally. And I think that's kind of how it kind of should be broken down. And there is that internal influence that we have over ourselves, the things that we tell ourselves, the things that maybe that self-motivation that we give ourselves. And there are the external things, like I was saying about how people, family, friends, and politics and social media, all these different things. I'm listing so many more things because there are so many more external influences than there are internal influences. And again, they're not necessarily all bad or good, but we have to understand them and decipher them. That's kind of like the biggest thing about this. It's like we have to decipher what is good and what's bad for us as far as this influence that's coming in, because that positive influence that can come from externally, we can follow people that are saying amazing TED Talks. We can follow just people that are maybe doing something that we're passionate about, doing something that advocates for body positivity or mental health, or just like all these different things that are good for us, that make us feel good, that make us want to do good things in the world, do good things for ourselves. Those are the influences that are good and for us to surround ourselves with, because again, this influence is constant. This influence is pervasive. It's going to happen. So have control over what is coming into your life and what you are being influenced by, because that's what it all comes down to. It's like, once we understand the fact that influence is within the very fabric of our lives, that gives us more control over how we are allowing it to be in our lives, how the relationship we're allowing it to have within our lives. And we can't understand that if we don't understand what's influencing us. I was thinking about this earlier, where it's like, like a positive influence, like my love of traveling, it was influenced by my mother, and her being able to let me travel at a young age. Like, I got to see so many places in the world, and that inspired my love of traveling. And that's something that has become an internal influence of mine for many of my decisions. The reasons why I save a certain amount of money, the reasons I set aside a certain amount of time for certain things, is because I want to travel. It's because I want to do these things that, maybe it was an external influence at one point. Maybe the experiences that I had, if I had a bad time while I was traveling and I was like, afraid of the flight, it was like a lot of turbulence or whatever it was, like, if that had influenced me, then maybe, I wouldn't have liked traveling. I don't know, but it influenced me in a positive way, and that became something that I took on that has ultimately helped me to develop myself further, because as I saw the world, I started to expand my horizon of just what I thought, the things that I believed in, the things that I felt, and obviously the realization that there's a big world out there. It's huge. I mean, there's so much to do out there. So, like, that is something that's become a passion for me, and that's why all influences aren't bad. They're not meant to be bad. They're not meant to be anything. Like, even the things that we have, like I say, about our emotions, which are also things that influence us. Our emotions influence us all the time to make certain decisions, to put ourselves in certain situations. It's so crazy the way emotions have influence over us. But at the end of the day, they're not inherently bad. Nothing is inherently bad. So it's about deciphering what is good for you, what you feel like you want for yourself. That's what this is all about, is taking those influences, taking the good things that we want for ourselves, the good things that are going to push us and evolve us and take us to that next level. Take those things and make it part of us, and go off that influence. Take that external influence, make it an internal influence, and make it something that's positive and good for you, because we can't get rid of influence or its hold on us, or just like how it's going to impact our lives in different magnitudes. But we can control the type of influence that we have. And we are constantly susceptible to negative influence, especially if you have social media. There's this documentary that was suggested to me by a friend. It's called The Social Dilemma. And if some of you have watched it, then you obviously know what it's about. And if you can guess by the title, then it's about social media and just like its influence over people. And the people in the documentary, they speak about how it's not always bad things necessarily. I mean, like, we all follow people on Instagram that, speak about body positivity, or that post pictures of like beautiful scenery and landscapes and things like that. And of course, that's like positive things. It inspires us to see the world and see the beauty that exists in life. But there are also those negative things, that those political ads that maybe come up in between those posts, or maybe those people that we follow that maybe aren't that positive in what they post, or maybe that make us feel self-conscious in ourselves. And those aren't really the things that we want for ourselves. So this documentary basically speaks about those two different halves, and how there's just this consuming nature that's happening with social media, that's allowing people in different positions of power, different avenues of advertisement and just influence, to get this data on us, basically allowing them to narrow in and understand better how to influence us. And I think when it comes down to understanding how we're being influenced, I think that if someone else is doing that job to figure out how to influence us without us realizing that we're even being influenced, then how do we have that power? It's like what I was saying about uncovering that thing before you have power to do something about it. You have to dig it up and then, dust it off and reveal what it is. Hold it in your hand before you can actually do something with it, and set it aside if you want to. But we're being influenced by so many things and don't even realize it, so we can't do anything about it. And these are things that we're willingly putting our attention towards. These are things that we're willingly putting our time towards and our energy towards. Things that are ultimately detrimenting our self-worth, our mental health, detrimenting the things that we believe that we want to do for ourselves, or believe that we can do for ourselves. And I think that that's something that it's the worst thing, when it starts to impact our belief in ourselves and our belief in the strength that we have as people and as individuals. So I feel like I'm kind of just like rambling on this topic, because I can go on so long about just this idea of influence, and how important it is to understand that we are constantly being influenced. There's something that I always wanted, where it's like a lot of people want to, a lot of people want money, a lot of people want fame or fortune, or just all these different things. And something I didn't realize I wanted, and when I did realize I wanted, it scared the death out of me. I wanted influence. And that's not necessarily like a bad thing, but I realized that influence was the root of all things. Money is power, but money is power because it's influence. Money has the ability to influence you, to influence things, influence laws, influence regulations. Money has the power to influence. And when you go to the root of all things, politics, they're, even a higher position in a store like management or CEO, you have more influence in general. If you get a promotion in your job, you start having more influence, you get more responsibilities, you get more power. But like I just said, responsibilities, there's this idea of, with more power comes more responsibility, and influence is power. Like, no matter how you turn it, influence is power. And that's why social media, people on social media, advertisers, they want that's power. to have that influence over the consumers, over us. That's power. And I'm not like, trying to sound like conspiracy theory, but this is like the reality of what it is. And no matter what, influence is going to be power. But with more power comes more responsibility. So when I realized that I wanted influence, it actually made me turn away from a lot of responsibilities and turn away from like wanting that, because I realized that if I wanted to have influence, then I wanted to make sure that the words that I said, the things that I said, the influence that I had was going to be something that was positive. And I didn't exactly know what that looked like. I didn't know how that would be. I realized that just influence is like something so important, and I wish that all people thought of influence as being that important. Or I mean, maybe some people do, but I feel like there are people in power, people that have influence, that are using it to manipulate people, using it to hurt people, using it to essentially not necessarily better the lives of the people that they're influencing. So I don't know. I think that there's just like there's so much with it, and I wish that we can all have a conscience when we think about the idea of influence and the influence we have over others. And it doesn't matter in what level you have influence in, because we have influence in different levels. You have influence over your friends, like if you have a friend that comes to you when they're upset, or comes to you when they're freaking out about something, and they listen to your words, that's influence. They listen to your words of advice. They take your advice, and they say, thank you, oh my gosh, thank you so much for helping me or talking me through this type of thing. That is influence. We have influence in so many different domains, and recognize your influence. That's something also so important, to recognize your own influence, because you have influence over so many things in your life. You have influence over so many people in your life, and sometimes we don't even realize it. And sometimes even the other people we interact with don't realize that we have influence over them. It's like sometimes we don't realize how much we care about someone until they're gone. Sometimes we don't realize how much we value someone or something until it's not available for us anymore. And that's what the idea of, what's that called? It's like some saying, I can't really think of it right now. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. This idea of just like, I mean, that's just like something where it's just like that longingness, that inability for that person to be there in your surrounding can impact you. Now, I'm not sure if that's even relevant to influence, but that is influence. Like when you even merge into a relationship with someone, you build a bond, you build a connection, you're influenced from one another. Because if that separation happens, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel bad. That person had an influence over you. And no matter how we call it or whatever we call it, it comes down to it being influence. And that doesn't mean like everything is influence, but it just means that, like a lot of the relationships, a lot of the things that are attached to our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, the things that we aspire towards, things that we move towards. I mean, this sounds like it's basically everything that who we are is coming from influence in some different way. And I'm as I think more about it, I mean, I think that it really is just, it makes up everything that we do, the things that we're influenced by. So know that this is something that's so big. It's something that's so consuming in our lives. So understand where you're being influenced, and like where you're being influenced. Understand how you're influencing other people, and what influence is good and what influence is bad. The things that are influencing you, the people that are influencing you that are not good for you, take those out of your life. Take control over that by understanding it, by realizing that this person has influence over me, this situation has influence over me, these things are making me not feel good in myself, and that means it has influence over me in some way. How do I negate that? How do I bring into my life the influences that are going to inspire me to be the best person that I can be, the person that I know I can be? And that's what it's all about. It's not eliminating this influence. It's not eliminate, because that's impossible. That's trying to fight something that is just like a natural law of nature. It's cause and effect. It's that is influence. Like the basis of cause and effect is influence. One thing influencing the other based on something that influenced that action. It's like it goes on and on of this idea of influence. So we don't negate it, but we can take control over it, and we can start manipulating it to work in our favor and work for us, because the goal is to see the light outside of the darkness. I mean, like, we will experience darkness no matter what. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to pop up into our lives in some degree. Now, sometimes less than others. When we have more control, when we start moving towards things that we value and that we love, maybe that those shadows are a little less. Maybe they come a little less often, but we have to understand. We have to know and uncover what those things are that are influencing our lives in different ways, and how to take control over that, and how to start moving in a way that makes us feel good and makes us want to do the things that we want to do for ourselves and feel the way that we want to feel about ourselves. And that's what I believe it comes down to. But no matter what, live your life and do the things that feel good for you, but just keep that in mind. Like, again, everything that I say, take it for a grain of salt. Everything that anyone says, take it for a grain of salt. I always say that because I recognize the influence that people can have over one another, and sometimes sometimes we take in information and we don't necessarily see if that fits in with what we truly believe in ourselves. And that's why we start holding on to things that we can say and not really feel that all of us are behind it, because it's something that's said from someone else, a thought or an idea or a feeling that's instilled by someone else, and it doesn't sit right with who we are. So think about those things for yourself. Think about what you feel in these day-to-day situations, and if that applies to you as far as just something not feeling good for you, then listen to that. Listen to you. You are the one that has to deal with it. You're the one that's with you. So listen to yourself, and I feel like that would always guide you to what you need. So that's really all I got for this episode. If you have any thoughts or ideas or comments or any new topics that you like to send in or share, you can send those to everything.sunpodcast@gmail.com. You can join the Instagram page at everything.sunpodcast. You can join the Twitter page at everysunpodcast, or you can join the Facebook group at Everything Under the Sun with Ty. Hope you all have a great week. Love you all, and I will see you next time.